Some stories aren't remembered for what happened, but for how they felt, like perfume on a forgotten letter or dust in late summer sunlight. There are places you can leave, but they never truly leave you. And there are people whose names you barely speak, but they remain in your chest like the echo of an unfinished sentence. He was one of them. A man with a house, too large for one heart. A man who lit up the sky not for himself, but for a green light across the bay. That summer, with its golden days and glassy nights, it was not really about parties or champagne. It was about reaching back in time, and trying to hold it still to wait for his love. And I was there. My name is Nick Carraway, and this is the story of Jay Gatsby, a man who built a palace of dreams on sand, and how the tide came in. In the summer of 1922, I came east that spring, looking for something I couldn't name. After the war, the Midwest, my home, felt too small. Too old. Too still. I had returned to a world that no longer fit, and so I went chasing something larger, a life, a fortune, or maybe just a clearer view of myself. West Egg was where I landed, a village on Long Island's North Shore, where new money built its castles too close to the sea. My house was modest, almost comically so, a forgotten caretaker's cottage squeezed between lavish estates. But I liked it. It was quiet. I could hear my thoughts again. Next door was a mansion that looked like it had been shipped in piece by piece from Europe. Gothic towers. Marble steps. A lawn that rolled like green silk to the water's edge. It had a view of the bay, and more importantly, it gleamed white against the sky and hosted parties that seemed to rewrite the night itself. I didn't know the owner's name at first. I only heard whispers which said, Gatsby. It was through Daisy, my cousin, that my summer began to take shape. She lived in East Egg. In a house that crouched on the bay like a proud, pale flower. When I visited her house that June, the lawn was bright with sun, and the breeze lifted the curtains like the room itself was exhaling. Daisy was radiant and seemed like a fairy in a white silk dress. She moved through the air as though it belonged to her, laughing softly, asking me questions and answering them before I had time to speak. Her husband, Tom Buchanan, stood beside her, hulking, confident, with the air of a man who had never once been told no. His eyes darted with possession. The world, to Tom, was something to conquer. He had played football at Yale, collected trophies and horses. And now carried his strength like a memory he wanted everyone to see. There was something aggressive in the way he poured wine or raised his voice, as if even joy required force. He made people feel like he was standing on a higher ground. Also at their table was Jordan Baker. A professional golfer with sharp eyes and a mouth that rarely smiled without calculation. She was slender, cool, and watched the room the way a cat watches a mousehole. Dinner that evening was lavish and cold. The kind of meal that fills your stomach but not your heart. Conversation floated like perfume. And just beneath it, something else. A phone rang. Tom left the room. Daisy's face stiffened for a moment. Then quickly returned to her smile. It wasn't the phone that changed her face, but the history attached to its ringing. Jordan leaned in and whispered, Tom has a woman in New York. And it wasn't a gossip, it was an accepted fact. That was my first evening back among them, a room with high ceilings and low truths, where beauty disguised boredom and wealth drowned the sound of discontent and disrespect. That night, I returned home unsettled. The sky was clear, the bay dark. And across the water, I saw a figure standing at the end of the dock, still. Alone. Both hands tucked into the pockets of his crisp trousers. His back straight, yet not stiff, like a man who had been waiting for something far too long. He wasn't looking at the stars. Not at the sea. He was looking across the water, towards East Egg. And his face. I couldn't see it clearly from where I stood. But there was something in the shape of his body, in the way he leaned forward ever so slightly, something that spoke of longing. And loss. He didn't know. I was watching. And I didn't say a word. I just stood there, at the edge of my porch, watching this stranger. He stood there for a long time, silent, gazing towards the green light across the bay, and at the end of Daisy's dock, a green light blinked softly. The green light was more than a beacon. It pulsed. It called. And though I didn't know it then, it wasn't calling me. It was calling someone else. I didn't know it then, but that lonely man whom I was watching that day was Gatsby. The great Gatsby. Earlier that summer, after I came back from Daisy's house, Tom had begun taking me on strange outings into New York. He never said where we were going. He just insisted I come. One afternoon, we stopped in the Valley of Ashes. There was a garage there, low-roofed and half-buried in gray. It was run by George Wilson. George was a pale, spiritless man, with blue eyes that had faded into the background of his own life. He seemed suspicious and miserable. Tom used to stop by, pretending to be friendly with him. His wife, Myrtle, was the opposite. Bold, curvy and loud. She wore tight dresses and red lipstick, as though trying to drag color into the ash. And Myrtle was Tom's mistress. He visited her when he wanted to escape the echo of Daisy's voice. Myrtle was his secret playground, and George never seemed to know, or perhaps didn't want to. Myrtle had dreams, not of Wilson's garage, but of pearls and apartments and champagne in the city. That day Tom told her to meet us at the train station separately so that George doesn't suspect anything. We went to Manhattan together, Myrtle, Tom and I. And stayed there in a small rented apartment. She changed dresses. Tom poured drinks. They fought and flirted in the same breath. And then, after one sharp comment, Tom struck her across the face and broke her nose. The laughter stopped. Blood spilled from her nose. No one spoke for a moment. Tom turned back to his whiskey like nothing had happened. Myrtle wept quietly near the curtains. For the first time, I saw the brutal, ugly side of Tom's power, not just physical dominance, but the emotional control he exerted over others. It made me feel disillusioned, disturbed, and alienated from the fake world which Tom represented. A few days later, a man in a pale uniform knocked on my door and handed me an envelope. It was a handwritten note. It was very polite. I was invited to one of Gatsby's parties. That night, I walked into his house like someone stepping into a dream. There were colors everywhere. Champagne flowed like water. Strangers danced like they would never be sober again. I wandered. I watched. Then, I met her. Jordan Baker. She was Daisy's friend whom I have met a few days before at Daisy's home. "You're Gatsby's neighbor?" she asked surprisingly. "I've never seen him." "And nor do I have," I replied. In fact, no one I knew had ever met the host. He was a sheer mystery for everyone. People simply spoke in whispers. "Gatsby once killed a man. No, he's a German spy. Or a prince, exiled." But when I finally met him, he was none of these things. He stood at the edge of the crowd, his hair combed perfectly, his smile effortless and charming. He held out his hand and said, "This is your first Gatsby party, isn't it?" His voice had the calm and his personality was very magnetic, and I instantly knew somewhere inside me that this was him. "This is Gatsby?" I asked, surprised. "I'm Gatsby," he nodded calmly. There was no arrogance. Just a simple, charming and a kind man. That night, he spoke with me more than he did with anyone. Gatsby was charming and attentive, but always watching the door as though waiting for someone. And all this while Jordan Baker stood near the marble fountain, her drink half full. Her eyes were transfixed on someone in the distance. A man in a white suit. Alone. Watching the bay. She stared as if she'd seen a ghost from another lifetime. Not a stranger. Not a mystery. But a name whispered once, long ago, under magnolia trees and southern skies. That night changed everything for me. The next morning, I found myself at Jordan's apartment. She had invited me abruptly for tea. She sat across from me, unusually quiet. "That man you met yesterday. At the party," she said finally. "That was him, Nick. That was Jay Gatsby." I frowned. "You knew him before?" I asked. She nodded. "But not as Gatsby. As a soldier. A lieutenant. The young charming boy Daisy Faye used to sneak away to meet behind her parents. They were in love, Nick. Deeply. Desperately. The kind of love you don't find twice. That year he went to war, but Daisy promised to wait. But her family never approved. They kept her close. And then came Tom Buchanan, with his money and horses and name. Jordan remembered the night before Daisy's wedding like it was yesterday. She was drunk. Crying. Holding a letter. She kept saying she'd changed her mind. That she couldn't do it. But the dress was ready. The pearls were bought. And the next morning, Daisy Faye became Daisy Buchanan. Gatsby came back from the war to nothing. The house was empty. The letters returned unread to him. So Gatsby did the only thing he knew. He built a fortune. Illegally. Desperately. Lavishly. And he bought the mansion across the bay. He threw parties hoping one night she'd walk in. But she never did. We never exactly knew what happened to him after the war. We thought he had died. Or vanished. But then. Last night, there he was at the party. Jordan leaned forward and said. He spoke to me after the party. Not for long. Just enough to ask. If I could help. He doesn't want to force anything. He just wants to see her. Just once. She paused. Nick. Could you invite Daisy to your cottage? Not a grand party. Not a mansion. Just something quiet. No pressure. No past. Her voice trembled, just slightly. He's waited 5 years, Nick. Let's give him 5 minutes. I said yes instantly. And that's how I became the thread that tied together a love buried in time and a dream built on sand. That was just the beginning. What I didn't know then was that love like that never returns the way you left it. And dreams, once stretched too far, begin to snap. After a few days, that morning arrived, the one Gatsby had been waiting for 5 long years. I had invited Daisy for the tea and she had agreed readily. Gatsby sent over flowers, white, trembling with dew. He arrived early. Waited outside. Paced like a boy about to see his first love all over again. Gatsby had waited for this morning like a man waits for spring in the dead of winter, the kind of hope that survives even when reason fades. And then came a car. Daisy finally stepped out dressed in pale lavender. She looked beautiful and fragile. Her eyes searched the porch. Then the doorway. And then, Gatsby. He stood still. Breathless. She trembled and smiled. Time folded in on itself. 5 years collapsed into 5 seconds. We sat in my small cottage. They sat across from each other, talking at first about little things, the weather, the tea, and the flowers. The rain tapped at the windows softly like it too wanted to listen to them quietly. They looked at each other. Not as they were now, but as they had been. And I quietly stood up to let them be alone. That afternoon, Gatsby showed Daisy his mansion. Room by room. Curtain by curtain. She touched everything like it was made of memory. In his bedroom, he pulled out his collection of silk shirts which he had imported from England, which he suddenly began tossing in the air like a boy showing off a treasure. "They're so beautiful," Daisy whispered. And then, she cried, not loudly but tears came softly. Gatsby watched her like a man watching God. The evening drifted slowly. Gatsby watched her like a man watching the stars come back after years of darkness. And Daisy, she laughed again, softer now, as though remembering who she used to be. And I quietly left them there. In the golden hush of the evening. Where nothing was certain. But everything felt possible again. That night, Gatsby and I stood by the dock. The green light flickered across the bay. "You always watched it," I said. "Like it meant something." "It did," he replied. "It meant Daisy." And as I looked at him, his eyes still locked on the green light, I realized something that Gatsby believed, with a childlike certainty, that everything could be restored. That time could be bent backward, that Daisy's heart could return to where it once belonged, untouched by years, untouched by Tom. But the past is not a hallway. It's a river. And once it flows past a shore, it does not return the same way. It moves forward, reshaping everything it touches. In the days that followed, Gatsby and Daisy began to drift toward each other like tides returning to a forgotten shore. They met often, sometimes at my cottage. Sometimes in secret corners of Gatsby's vast estate. Their laughter floated like music across the house. Daisy's eyes sparkled again, and Gatsby, he lived every second like he was reclaiming the years he had lost. But Tom began to notice everything. Daisy was smiling more. Laughing at nothing. Taking longer drives. Wearing perfume Gatsby liked. Tom watched Daisy more closely, questioned her more sharply. Beneath his polished smile, something dark stirred, a man not used to losing anything, especially not to someone like Gatsby. It all started with the invitation for lunch by Daisy. She asked me to bring Gatsby over lunch sometime. She said it lightly, but her voice had a kind of a hope and a longing in it. Later that evening, as I was leaving the house, Tom appeared at the front door. He looked at Daisy for a long second, then at me. He'd started to notice her new silences, her sudden laughter, the way she vanished into thought when Gatsby's name came up. The next morning, Tom called me. His voice was calm, too calm. "Let's make it a proper lunch," he said. "You, me, Daisy, Jordan. And Gatsby." I realized at the moment that though Daisy had made the invitation. But now, the afternoon belonged to Tom. He had turned her invitation into his confrontation. That afternoon, Gatsby arrived at the Buchanan house dressed in white. Nervous, but composed. Tom was already standing near the doorway when we entered, holding a drink in his hand. Daisy smiled as Gatsby stepped inside, her voice a little too cheerful. She introduced Gatsby to Tom and said, "Tom, you remember Gatsby, don't you?" Tom looked at him, long and hard, then took a slow step forward and said, "We've met before, but I don't think we were ever properly introduced." Gatsby gave a small nod and extended his hand. "I'm Gatsby. Very pleased to meet you." They shook hands. It was polite, brief, and cold. Like two men who already knew they weren't going to like each other. The lunch was pleasant on the surface, there was laughter, drinks, light conversations. But an unspoken tension hung just under the surface. Tom observed Daisy's mannerisms very sharply. And Daisy looked at Gatsby like no one else was in the room. At one point, Daisy leaned forward and gently brushed something off Gatsby's shoulder. It was just a small gesture, but it said too much. The lunch was almost over when Tom leaned back in his chair and looked at Gatsby with a half smile and asked, So, how exactly do you know my wife, old sport? There was a pause, just a second too long. Gatsby answered evenly. We met years ago, in Louisville. Daisy meanwhile glanced down at her plate, silently. Tom nodded slowly, swirling his drink and said, "Ah. The war days. I see." But he didn't see. Not really. He was starting to understand. And that polite smile on his face was no longer polite. He stood up suddenly and declared in a haste. "This heat is awful," he said. "Why don't we all go to the city? Get a drink. Cool off." His voice wasn't casual. It was a command. And we all knew, it wasn't the heat he wanted to escape. It was the silent chemistry between his wife and another man which he desperately wanted to know. We left the Buchanan house in silence, with tension hanging in the air. Tom had taken the wheel, not just of the car, but of the moment. He said we'd all go together. Daisy can ride with Gatsby. He said. He's got the bigger car. Tom offered the idea like a friendly gesture. But it wasn't. It was his way of letting them walk into a trap he could see coming. Tom drove Jordan and me in his coupe. Gatsby and Daisy followed behind in the yellow car, the one everyone in town recognized. When we passed George Wilson's garage, George came out looking pale, like a man who hadn't slept in days. He looked tired, not from work, but from something deeper. Tom slowed his car and George came towards us running breathlessly. "Mr. Buchanan," he said. "I need to get away from here. Myrtle's not herself lately. I think we both need a change. I want to take her west, and start over afresh. But I can't go anywhere without a car. You said once you'd sell me that coupe of yours. Will you still do it?" The coupe was Tom's own sleek, two-door car. It was something George had been asking about for months. He saw it as his ticket out. A way to make money, or at least to have the means to leave this place and start a new life with Myrtle. Tom gripped the steering wheel, his jaw tight and eyes narrowed. He quietly murmured under his breath. "That damn fool wants to take her away somewhere. I might have to sell him that car just to shut him up." Tom didn't say Myrtle's name. But we both knew. Tom drove off without saying a word to George. After a short while we reached the Plaza Hotel. It was too grand. The lobby glittered like diamonds. We took a suite on the upper floor. No one really wanted a drink. But Tom ordered them anyway, mint juleps and some drinks. The room filled with silence. It was not peace. The room occupied just heat. And history. Gatsby stood by the window, his back straight. Tom leaned against the table. Daisy sat between them, twisting her rings. There was a visible tension in the room which was felt by each and every person. We weren't there to escape the heat. We were there to watch something end. Tom paced slowly, his drink in hand. He had been watching all afternoon, watching the way Daisy's eyes kept drifting toward Gatsby. How she laughed at his smallest words. How she seemed to forget that Tom was even in the room. Finally, he stopped and looked at Gatsby directly and said, "I suppose the time has come, old sport, for us to have a little talk." Gatsby stayed calm, but I could see his hand tighten on the arm of the chair. "What exactly is going on between you and my wife?" Tom asked Gatsby. The words fell into the silence like stones in water. Daisy froze. Jordan looked away. I didn't breathe. Gatsby said calmly. "Your wife never loved you. She has always loved me." He then turned to Daisy, his eyes searching hers and said, "Tell him. Tell him you never loved him, Daisy." For a moment, it seemed like she might say that. Her lips parted, but instead what Gatsby wanted her to say, she shouted. "Oh, you want too much." She cried to Gatsby. "I love you now, isn't that enough? I can't help what's past." She began to sob helplessly. "I did love him once, but I loved you too." It was only a single sentence, but it shattered Gatsby's perfect vision of the past. Tom leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. He said, "You hear that, Gatsby? She's not leaving me. Not for you. You're nothing but a man who throws parties for strangers, trying to pretend you belong here." Gatsby's voice grew firmer. "She's leaving you today." But Daisy's eyes had already dropped to the floor. Her voice was softer now. She whispered, "I can't. Not now." In that moment, Gatsby's dream began to collapse with a crash. Tom had won, not by love, but by making Daisy afraid to step into the unknown. Tom smirked and said, "That's all you needed to hear, isn't it? She's not going anywhere with you." Tom's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Why don't you take her home, Gatsby? Daisy can ride with you," he said, his voice almost polite. "You've got the bigger car." Gatsby rose without a word, holding the door for her as they stepped out into the thick afternoon heat. She slid into the yellow car, avoiding Tom's eyes, and in a moment, the engine's deep hum carried them away down Fifth Avenue. Tom, with Jordan beside him and me in the back, took the wheel of his blue coupe, following at a measured pace, the city's shimmering air between us. But Tom's smirk lingered in the rearview mirror. He wasn't worried anymore. Later, as the sun dipped low, we passed the crowd. A woman's body lay covered by a sheet on the road, her arms sticking out, still, lifeless. It was Myrtle. Michaelis, the coffee shop owner, told us she'd run out into the road aimlessly, maybe thinking the driver would stop for her. Witnesses said it was a yellow car. The driver never stopped. Wilson was bent over her, shaking like a man who had lost everything. His voice hoarse with grief and rage. Tom's face hardened. He didn't say Gatsby's name, but he didn't need to. The color of the car had already done the work. That night, back in West Egg, Gatsby told me what really happened. Daisy had been driving when Myrtle ran out into the road hysterically. There had been no time to stop the car. The car had struck Myrtle badly and Gatsby had pulled her hands from the wheel, guiding them home in silence. He took the blame instantly, telling me he would say he was driving. Daisy was too shaken to stop the car. Gatsby had taken the blame to protect her. Saying this, he stood at the edge of his pool, looking out toward the green light across the bay. "I just want to wait here. In case she needs me," Gatsby said. I think he truly believed she would call and that she might come to him, and that the night wasn't over. The next morning was still. The sky a pale wash over West Egg. Gatsby remained by the pool, for the first time all summer, as though the water might cool the fever in his thoughts. He kept glancing toward the house, half expecting the telephone to ring, certain that Daisy would call, that her voice would break the long night's silence. Across the bay, George Wilson was piecing together his own truth from fragments of grief. He had learned from Michaelis, the coffee stand owner, that the car which struck Myrtle had been bright yellow. And Tom Buchanan, in a low, tight voice, had told him who it belonged to. By late morning, Wilson's footsteps crunched across the gravel of Gatsby's drive. He moved like a man in a trance, eyes fixed ahead. Gatsby, floating in the pool, did not hear him until it was too late. There was no cry, no warning, just the flat, shattering sound of the gun echoing off the marble walls of the house. Gatsby sank slowly into the water, his dreams dissolving into ripples that reached the pool's edge and vanished. Wilson staggered back into the trees, and another shot cracked through the stillness. Then, only silence. He had shot himself too, to get over the grief and misery of his dead life. I heard it all hours later, when the servants called me, their voices thin with shock. Standing beside the pool, I looked at Gatsby's body, the blue water swaying gently around him. He had waited for his Daisy until the very last breath, but no call had come. The afternoon sun threw long shadows across the garden, and the house, once so alive with music and light, felt cavernous and hollow, like the echo of a dream too fragile to last. The days that followed blurred into one another, heavy with heat and an unnatural quiet. The police came, asked questions, wrote notes. The newspapers ran their stories, each one more careless than the last. To them, Gatsby was just a headline, the dead millionaire, the scandal, the gossip. I called Daisy. I sent letters. No answer came. By the second day, it was clear she and Tom had gone away, leaving no address, no word. They slipped out as though they had simply closed a door on the whole thing. Arranging Gatsby's funeral fell to me. I thought of the hundreds who had filled his gardens on summer nights, their laughter spilling into the morning, their champagne glasses raised beneath his lights. I thought they might come to pay respects. They did not. In the end, the house stood empty except for a few servants, and Gatsby's father. A gray, frail man who had traveled from Minnesota, clutching a photograph of the house his son had built. The service was small. The rain fell in thin, steady lines, pooling at our feet. The priest's voice was soft. I kept glancing back, expecting someone, anyone, from those glittering nights to appear. But no one did. Afterward, I walked alone through the house. The room still smelled faintly of the flowers Daisy had loved. The closets held his suits, pressed and waiting. Everything was in place, yet stripped of its meaning without him there. Gatsby was buried with no mourners. No crowds. He was a man who had thrown entire stars into the sky for people who never even knew his name. Daisy went back to her world of silk and silence, and the mansion that once shimmered with laughter fell quiet, like a stage after the curtain falls. I left the East, but the East never left me. Sometimes, when I pass still water, I think of Gatsby, and that green light. He believed in the dream. Not the money. Not the parties. But the hope that something lost could still be found. That a single heartbeat could hold back time. But life doesn't work like that. It slips away. And the harder you reach, the more it drifts beyond your grasp. The past is not a place we can live in, only a shadow we carry. And Gatsby? He wasn't a man. He was a question the world never answered. A figure carved from longing, standing at the edge of time. Not a man. But a flicker. A green light. Still reaching for a shore that no longer exists.